A police officer thought he'd stopped a suspicious black woman. What he didn't know was she was one of the most respected and powerful generals in the U.S. military. He didn't know until the Pentagon was alerted, and her name rang like a thunderclap across the system. This isn't just a story about a wrongful arrest. It's a hard lesson in bias, power, and unshakable dignity. If you believe this story deserves to be heard, hit subscribe, share this video, and tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from, because every voice counts when justice is on the line. General Dana Whitaker, a decorated officer of the United States Army with 3 stars on her shoulder, sat calmly inside her matte black Jeep Grand Cherokee, parked just off Highway 94. She was adjusting the military-grade GPS on her dashboard, recalibrating it due to recent construction detours near Fort Mitchell. Though she'd been stationed there countless times, even the most seasoned generals could lose their bearings when the terrain kept shifting. Blue and red lights suddenly lit up her rear-view mirror. The distant hum of traffic dulled as Donna exhaled, not in fear, not even frustration, but with that deep, ancestral sigh Black Americans know all too well, the kind of sigh that whispers, "Not again." She rolled down the window and placed both hands on the steering wheel, perfectly at 10 and 2. Her movements were precise, slow, deliberate, like she'd done this before. Because she had. Hands where I can see them. The voice was sharp, almost gleeful in its authority. Officer Clay Dawson approached, one hand on his belt, the other hovering too close to his holster. His tone made it clear to him she wasn't a general. She wasn't even a woman with a name. Just another suspicious figure in a dark SUV. Dana's fingers tapped the leather of the steering wheel rhythmically, an old combat trick to keep her heart rate steady. She didn't turn to look at him right away. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what this was. "License and registration," he snapped. "Reaching now," she replied, her voice calm and unshaken. Slowly she opened the glove compartment, her eyes never leaving her own hands. Every movement was textbook calculated, cautious, practiced. She handed over the documents. "My registration's up to date. I pulled off the road to reset my GPS. Nothing illegal about that." Dawson didn't look at the papers. He just took a step back and tapped the release on his holster. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. Dana turned her head just slightly. "Am I under arrest, officer?" Across the road, a man in a gray sedan began recording the scene on his phone. Another car slowed. Someone shouted. She didn't do anything. But Dawson didn't flinch. The badge on his chest gave him the illusion of control, and he wasn't going to give it up, not even to a woman who'd worn her uniform longer than he'd worn his badge. Dana unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out, smooth and poised, as if walking into a mission briefing. She stood tall, back straight, eyes clear. "You have any weapons on you?" Dawson asked, circling her like a predator unsure of its prey. "No, officer," she said. "I'm active duty. My weapons are secured on base." "Oh, so you're military now," he sneered. "What are you, a mechanic or something?" Dana didn't respond. She didn't have to. The weight of her silence was louder than any title he could mispronounce. But silence wasn't enough for Dawson. "You know what? Hands behind your back." And just like that, cuffed. Pressed against the hood of her own Jeep. The metal cold. The asphalt hot. Her wrists bruised not by the cuffs but by the centuries of weight they carried. She didn't resist. She didn't scream. She just breathed slow and steady. Because Dana Whitaker knew exactly what power looked like. And this was just its impersonation. Officer Clay Dawson circled General Dana Whitaker like a man looking for trouble he couldn't quite name. His flashlight skimmed across the tinted windows of her Jeep, as if it might uncover a hidden crime. But he wasn't searching for contraband. He was searching for justification for anything to match the story already playing in his head. "You've got heavily tinted windows," he said, tapping the glass with the butt of his flashlight. "That's illegal." "It's legal for active duty military vehicles registered on base," Dana replied, her voice still composed. "I have the documentation if you'd like." "I didn't ask for a lecture," Dawson interrupted, his tone sharpening like a blade drawn too fast. "Step back." There was again that word. "Ma'am." Not general, not Whitaker, just a word packed with contempt, stripped of respect. A placeholder for someone whose authority he refused to see. She shifted her stance slightly, careful not to provoke. "Officer, I believe we're well past the point of this being a routine stop. I'd like to make a phone call." "Oh, you'll be making a phone call," Dawson sneered. At the station. Then, without another word, he grabbed her by the arm, pulled her closer, and tightened the cuffs. The steel bit into her wrists. His knee shoved into her lower back as he pushed her against the hood of her vehicle. The sun beat down. The traffic kept moving. A camera across the street zoomed in. A few voices began to shout, bystanders outraged. She didn't do anything. Let her go. But Dawson heard none of it. Or maybe he just didn't care. Because to him, she wasn't a general. She wasn't a war hero. She wasn't even a citizen. She was a target. And that was his mistake. Because while Dana Whitaker's body stayed still, her mind was already moving, calculating, remembering the exact phrasing, the exact number, the exact code. The one phone call that would collapse the fantasy officer Dawson had built around his badge and his bias. But she didn't say it yet. She let him have his illusion. Let him bask in the moment. Because when the real power arrived, it wouldn't knock. It would land like a storm. The cuffs were tight, but Dana Whitaker didn't wince. She stood steady, even as Officer Dawson shoved her toward the back seat of his cruiser like a petty criminal. The sun glinted off the stars on her shoulder, stars he still refused to see. The onlookers grew louder. Phones were raised higher. The atmosphere had shifted. Something was coming, but Dawson couldn't feel it. He was too wrapped up in his performance. Uncooperative suspect, he muttered into his radio. Claiming to be military, probably fake. I'm bringing her in. In. Across the highway, Captain Clay Dawson stepped out of his car. His hand was steady, his army badge around his neck glinting under the Georgia sun. He'd been watching the entire time. He didn't know her name at first. But he knew the posture, the discipline, the unshakable presence of someone who had stood through far worse than traffic stops. And now he knew exactly who she was. He crossed the road without hesitation. "Officer," Clay said, his voice calm but commanding. "Captain Clay Dawson, U.S. Army. I'm requesting you stop this detainment immediately." Dawson turned, squinting. "Who the hell are you?" "I just told you." "And that woman is General Dana Whitaker. She outranks every uniform in this entire county, including your sheriff." Dawson froze. He looked from Clay to Dana and back again. "Doesn't matter," he mumbled, gripping Dana's arm harder. "Nobody's above the law." "And neither are you," Clay replied without flinching. Dana stood tall now. The pain in her wrists meant nothing. Her eyes met Dawson's, clear, sharp, unflinching. "This is the real world, officer," she said, voice cool as steel. "And it's about to meet the part of it you didn't think could touch you." And just then, a low thud began to hum through the air. The crowd looked up. Dawson turned his head toward the sky, and the sound grew louder. Because when power answers a call, it doesn't walk. It arrives from above. The helicopter appeared over the tree line like a shadow with weight. Its matte gray exterior bore no insignia, no markings, just raw authority etched into its shape. Civilians stepped back, shielding their faces from the sudden gusts of wind. Officer Dawson's hand dropped from Dana's arm as the rotor sent dust swirling around them. He took an instinctive step back, eyes wide, breath caught. Down the road, a black government SUV cut through traffic like a scalpel. It stopped behind the crowd. The door opened before the engine fully stopped. Out stepped a woman in a navy pantsuit, silver hair pulled back into a bun, her heels hitting the pavement like gavel strikes. Colonel Nadine Foster didn't walk. She advanced. "Which one of you is responsible for this nonsense?" she asked, her tone measured but sharp enough to slice concrete. Officer Dawson cleared his throat, already pale. She was uncooperative. Possibly impersonating. "Stop talking," Nadine interrupted, holding up one hand like a command signal. She turned to Dana without missing a beat. "General, are you all right?" Dana gave a slight nod, just waiting for reason to show up. Without another word, Nadine reached into her pocket, pulled out a small key, and unlocked the cuffs herself. The sound of the metal clicking open was louder than the chopper's hum. Captain Clay Dawson let out a quiet exhale behind her. "Sal." Dawson stood frozen. "You detained a 3-star general without verifying her ID," Nadine said, turning back to him. "You ignored her rank, violated federal protocol, and committed an unlawful arrest of active military personnel. Do you even comprehend the gravity of what you've done?" Dawson opened his mouth, but she cut him off again. "Every word you say now is just another inch you're digging your own grave." Around them, phones recorded everything. Dash cams, body cams, even a drone overhead. There was no escape from the lens of accountability. Dana adjusted her sleeves, her wrist red but unshaken. "You see," she said quietly, looking straight at Dawson, "your job is to serve, not to assume. Not to threaten. And certainly not to humiliate someone just because she doesn't look like the authority you expect." Dawson said nothing. He couldn't. There were no words that would fix what he had done. Not anymore. And Dana didn't look back when she stepped toward her Jeep. She didn't need to. Because now, everyone knew her name. The next morning, the incident was no longer just a roadside altercation. It was national news. Video footage of Dana Cole, decorated general, restrained like a suspect, had gone viral. Social media buzzed with disbelief, outrage, and a single question repeated across every platform: how does this still happen? Inside the Internal Affairs Office of the Kingsford Police Department, Officer Brent Dawson sat rigid in a chair that suddenly felt too small. The room was sterile, humming faintly with fluorescent lights, and the folder on the table in front of him looked like it weighed 100 pounds. It held the evidence, screenshots, timestamps, tamays, and worst of all, the truth. Deputy Chief Harold Quinn sat across from him, silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, but every word landed like a gavel. "Do you know who General Dana Cole is?" Dawson swallowed hard. "Now I do," he muttered. "She's not just a general," Quinn said. "She's history. First black woman to command an airborne division. She has more stars on her uniform than you have years on the force." Dawson's mouth opened, then closed again. "Did she resist arrest?" Quinn continued. "Did she threaten you? Did she fail to comply?" "No, sir." "Then why escalate?" Quinn leaned forward, voice sharpening. "Why the cuffs? Why the knee in her back? Why the damn ego trip?" Dawson stared down at his hands. "She didn't give me her name at first. She seemed dismissive." "Dismissive?" Quinn echoed, incredulous. "She was composed. You felt threatened by her composure. That's not dismissive. That's dignified." He stood up, pacing slowly behind his chair. "You've embarrassed this department. You've embarrassed this city. And you've given fuel to every protester who's ever said we target people who don't look like us." "I didn't do it because she's black," Dawson said quickly. "But she is black," Quinn snapped, turning back to him. "And you did do it. Whether you like it or not, that's what the whole damn country sees. And now that's what we have to answer for." Dawson had nothing left to say, because nothing he could say would undo what was already in motion. Across town, General Dana Cole sat barefoot in her brother's living room, a mug of tea cooling beside her, her uniform jacket folded neatly over the arm of the couch. The adrenaline had faded, but her spine was still straight, her mind still in uniform. Elijah sat opposite her, notepad in hand, glasses sliding down his nose, the same ones he swore he didn't need. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. "Once it's out there, you can't pull it back." Dana didn't answer immediately. She was watching the video again, her own voice calm under pressure, Dawson's hand tightening on her arm, clay stepping into frame like a blade through fog. She'd lived it, but watching it felt heavier. "It's already out there," she said softly. "I didn't choose to be the story, but I won't let them finish it without me." Elijah nodded. "The press wants a statement. Some want an interview. You could go on every major network by noon." "I don't want attention," Dana said. "I want awareness." He studied her for a moment, then leaned forward. "Then speak. Tell them what it means to wear the uniform and still get treated like a threat. Tell them what dignity looks like when it's pushed face first against a car hood." Dana exhaled slowly, grounding herself. "I don't want to make this about me. But it is about you," Elijah said, firm, "because they didn't stop a stranger. They stopped a black woman in uniform. And if you don't speak, who will speak for the ones without stars on their shoulders?" The doorbell rang. Dana stood, her movements precise, controlled. When she opened the door, Captain Clay Dawson stood there, hat in hand. "I wasn't sure if I should come," he said. "You're welcome here," Dana replied. He stepped inside, glancing around at the awards, the photographs, smiles frozen in time on battlefields most Americans couldn't pronounce. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said quietly, "for how you handled it, for showing us all what strength really looks like." Dana gave him a tired but genuine smile. It's not about strength, she said. It's about choice. And I chose not to give them what they expected. Clay nodded. You changed something out there. That video what you said it's going to last. And for once the hero doesn't disappear before the final act. Dana's phone buzzed on the table. A message from Colonel Foster, request, private briefing. National Awareness Initiative. Are you ready? She stared at the screen for a long second, then tapped it dark. Yes, she whispered. I'm ready. The next day, the Pentagon South entrance was lined with press vans, security barriers, and a crowd that stretched down the street. Some held signs that read, "We stand with General Cole." Others simply held their breath, waiting. There had been no leaked statements, no interviews, only one official notice. General Dana Cole will address the public at 2 p.m. No questions will be taken. Inside the press room, the tension was sharp enough to slice through. Journalists whispered, lenses adjusted, microphones tested and retested. Even the air conditioning seemed to hum with anticipation. And then on the dot she entered. No entourage. No podium pounding. No theatrics. Just a woman in uniform, polished boots, a chest full of medals earned in places most Americans would never see. She stepped up to the mic, paused just long enough to meet the eyes of the front row, and spoke. My name is Dana Cole. I am a daughter. A sister. A soldier. I have served this country for 27 years. I have led battalions through fire, negotiated peace where there was none, and stood at too many memorials with families who never got to say goodbye. She paused. The room held its breath. And yet, last week I was forced to lay my face against the hood of my own vehicle, because someone saw my skin before they saw my stars. Because someone assumed I was a threat, not a protector. Because someone believed their fear mattered more than my service. Her voice never rose, but each word landed with the weight of truth. I am not here to shame a man. I am here to expose a system where assumptions are loaded faster than facts, where suspicion is written into the first glance, where dignity becomes a luxury, not a right. The silence in the room was thunderous. I will not beg for justice. I will expect it. I will expect it not just for those of us with rank and ribbons, but for the millions without who will never get the benefit of the doubt because someone decided they didn't belong. She stepped back from the podium. No applause. No flashbulbs. Just stunned, reverent stillness. Outside, the crowd didn't cheer. They chanted soft, steady, resolute. General Cole. General Cole. Dana walked the corridor alone. Her heels clicked like a clock counting down to something new. At the end of the hallway, Colonel Foster waited with a nod. That, she said, was the sound of a nation turning its head. Dana replied, now we make them look. That same evening, Officer Brent Mallory sat alone in a windowless room at the Kingsford Police Department. A sealed envelope lay on the table before him. Inside, his termination notice effective immediately. No ceremony, no second chances, just 5 printed lines ending his career. He didn't turn on the TV. He didn't check his phone. He already knew the story was everywhere. Her name, her face, the video, the shame. He had thought about writing a statement, maybe even an apology. But what would he say? That he didn't know. That it wasn't about race. But it had always been about race. Not in the loud, obvious ways, but in the quiet assumptions. The snap judgments. The control masked as procedure. He had cuffed a 3-star general on the side of the road because she didn't look like power, at least not the version he was taught to see. Across town, Captain Clay Dawson stood outside Fort Mitchell's chapel. He didn't pray. He just breathed thought and remembered how close it had come to being worse. Another name. Another headline. Another life stolen by arrogance. He was grateful it hadn't ended that way. Because one woman refused to lose her dignity even when they tried to strip it away. And now the whole world was watching. Days later, Cassandra stood in front of a public school classroom in Southeast DC. The desks were filled with curious 9th graders, black and brown kids who had seen her face on the news, who knew her story. She didn't come to impress. She came to connect. Weren't you scared? One girl asked. I was steady, Cassandra replied. That's different. Fear speaks loud, but steady, that speaks clear. Another student leaned forward. But you outranked him. Why didn't you just put him in his place? She smiled gently. Because rank doesn't stop bullets, and power without control is just noise. The students nodded slowly, their silence deeper than applause. And then one by one, they stood not to cheer, not to clap, but to honor something they recognized, strength that didn't shout, but stood. That same week, Congress passed the Ellison Protocols, national reforms for police de-escalation, military ID verification, and racial bias training. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. Back home, Cassandra walked barefoot through her living room. Her father's folded flag sat on a shelf. He had fought in Vietnam only to return to a country that never saw his worth. She looked at his photo, then out the window at the darkening sky. She had fought many battles abroad, but this battle for dignity, for truth, felt different. Because this time she was fighting for home. And home was finally listening. Cassandra didn't return to Kingsford. She didn't need to. Her presence was already carved into its history, not with anger, but with undeniable truth. She continued her work from Washington, mentoring young officers, speaking at academies, and quietly helping rewrite the rules that once tried to silence her. Some called her a hero. Others called her a catalyst. But Cassandra never chased titles. She simply showed up calm, composed, unshakable until the system had no choice but to listen. She knew the work wasn't finished. Racism didn't dissolve with headlines. Bias didn't disappear with policy. But every step forward carved a path for someone else to follow. One evening, standing on her balcony as the sun slipped behind the city, Cassandra whispered words her father once told her. You don't fight to be seen. You fight so others don't have to. As the wind passed over her shoulders like a quiet salute, she knew this battle may be done, but the mission continues. Not in rage, not in vengeance, but in truth, in dignity, and in the promise that next time maybe no one will have to stand alone. This story reminds us that even those who wear the uniform can be stripped of their humanity by the very system they serve. It's not about revenge, it's about responsibility. And it's not just Cassandra's story. It's a reflection of countless stories left untold. Now we turn to you. What are your thoughts on this story? What lesson did it leave with you? Share your perspective in the comments, because when more voices speak, fewer people are silenced. And here's a question we hope you'll answer honestly. In your view, by the year 2050, will we still be confronting stories like Cassandra's? Or will dignity, justice, and equality finally become the standard, not the exception? Let's talk. Let's imagine. And most of all, let's act. Note, this story is entirely fictional and created for the purpose of raising awareness. It highlights issues of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating everyone with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose violence, prejudice, and injustice in all forms. Viewer discretion is advised.